Hey everyone, welcome Blind Eye Friends. Today we are going to be reading The Wounded Heart, and the last time we were together we were on part 1, and I just shook the camera, sorry. Part 1, and it was letter C. So now we will be on part 2, letter A. And we left off on page 54. So we're going to dive right into it, and it is chapter 2, The Enemy, Sin, and Shame. It's on page 54, and we're going to be reading page 55 by Dr. Dan B. Allender, forwarded by Dr. Larry Crabb. Let's get started. The war has begun, but who is the enemy? The question seems too simple. Let me tell you why. Some time ago, I was inflicted by the male counterpart of childbirth, a kidney stone. That's funny. If you had asked me to describe my enemy, assuming I could answer at all, I would have looked incredulous and shouted, "My pain," referring, of course, to the searing pain that was signaling the end of my existence. The effect of intense anguish is interesting. It dispels all thoughts other than the desire for relief. The enemy is the pain and whatever is responsible for it. To ask an abused person, "Who is your enemy?" invites the same kind of response. The enemy is the pain of abuse and the person responsible for causing that pain. The pain would not be there if the abuser had not committed the crime. The enemy is obvious, or so it seems. But notice what happens when the enemy is the abuser. The victim is caught in a vicious, reactionary cycle of either fight or flight. To diminish the poison of the abuse, all that can be done is to forget, overcome, master, or retaliate against the abuser, who brought the pain into the soul. It is not only an endless war, but a futile one. Imagine trying to forget someone. The effort itself focuses attention on the person you long to forget. The energy enlisted and expanded in trying to forget dooms the enterprise before it begins. Okay. The energy enlisted and expended in trying to forget dooms the enterprise before it begins. Similarly, a commitment never to be hurt again by the abuser or anyone else like him creates a hard, inflexible exterior and in turn leads to the loneliness that the hardness was developed to avoid. The victim's defense armor will add more pain to her soul, and her pain will strengthen her resolve never to be hurt, inevitably increasing the wintry ice in her heart. The protection against pain, in fact, intensifies the pain that it was supposed to decrease. If the enemy is the abuser, hated or excused, then he will continue to play out his heinous role years later by eliciting an endless reactive response. There are two possible strategies to deal with the foe: fight or flight. The two options seem very different. One involves frontal attack and the other is face-saving retreat. The strategy of fight, angry man, hating zeal, and the strategy of flight, quiet complacency, are in fact more alike than different. Both are an attempt to avoid the internal battle. The energy that fuels the vindictive attack or stagnant submission is desired to escape the wounded heart. So, the energy that fuels the vindictive attack or stagnant submission is a desire to escape the wounded heart. Any battle fought against this enemy, and he does deserve to be called an enemy, will lead to hopeless despair. It is like fighting a phantom, a ghost that cannot be punched, stabbed, or otherwise killed. The abuser is a problem, but this is good news. He is not the major one. Who, then, or what, is the real foe? Simply put, the problem is in the victim, leading to broken relationships, loneliness, depression, eating disorders, promiscuity, promiscuity. S, coldness and frightening rage. Something is wrong inside. Nothing can quite manage to cover it up. Smiles, busy schedules, successful Christian loving. Nothing soothes the battle raging deep within the soul. I once asked a woman who was arred by her father and later by her husband to define the essence of her struggle in life. With a biting snarl and a caustic tone that communicated strong hatred, betrayed only by the sadness in her eyes. She said, if I could only rid myself of my hunger for a man, I could be happy. Her words might be elaborated as follows. If I could only find a way not to hunger for a relationship, if I could deaden my soul to what was I made, if I could deaden my soul to what I was made for, the longing to be pursued, embraced, known, and enjoyed, then I could live without sorrow. Her enemy was her longings. I thought the term was like, honestly, I don't know why with this chapter so far, I feel, I can get with it. It's resonating and I didn't want to stop yet, but there's so many thoughts going through my head right now. So I do want to interject soon. Let me state an important observation. I have never worked with an abused man or woman who did not hate or mistrust the hunger for intimacy. In most victims, the essence of the battle is a hatred of their hunger for love and a strong distaste for any passion that might lead to a vulnerable expression of desire. The same woman in tears said, I only wish I had not wanted my father's love. I could have found some way out. If I wasn't so weak and stupid, the enemy, or so it feels, is the passion to be... Sorry, I kind of made that a run-on sentence. So her quote was, I only wish I had not wanted my father's love. I could have found some way out if I wasn't so weak and stupid. The enemy, or so it feels, is the passion to be lovingly pursued and nourishingly touched by a person whose heart is utterly disposed to do us good. Such people, if they exist at all, are rare. It is therefore easier to hate the hunger than to wait expectantly for the day of satisfaction. The abused woman has plenty of reasons to despise her own passion. The abused woman has plenty of reasons to despise her own passion. I 100% feel this. I hate needing that. I hate needing love. I hate needing certain things that make me feel fulfilled. It makes me mad. I wish I didn't need that to feel happy and fulfilled and feel like my cup is full. If we want to do the 5 love languages kind of phrase. My love tank. Whoa, what's happening to my hair? Sorry. All right. Hating her longings starts a self-annihilating civil war that kills her soul. But the enemy is not really the longings of her heart anymore that is the abuser. Neither is responsible for sabotaging life and love, yet something is deadening the soul. What is it? Ultimately, the enemy is the prowling beast that attempts to devour and destroy the beauty of God's kingdom. The enemy is sin, that fallen, autonomous striving for life that refuses to bow to God. The enemy is the eternal reality that will not cry out to God in humble, broken dependence. It is the victim's subtle or blatant determination to make life work on her own by refusing to acknowledge or let God fulfill her deepest longings. The enemy is the same for the abused person. The enemy is the same for the abused person as it is for those who have not been essayed a determined, reliable inclination to pursue false gods, to find life apart from dynamic, moment-by-moment relationship with the Lord of life. For the abused person, however, the past grievous violation of trust and intimacy even more dramatically inflames her determination to live without the pain of unmet longings. and thus without the raging thirst of a soul that pants for God alone. The issues that are found in all our lives are more intensely and dramatically present in the struggles of those who have been SA'd. An understanding of SA, therefore, will help make clear what happens to anyone's soul when he or she is sinned against, whether normally, quote unquote, normally, and inevitably or severely when abuse occurs. Victimization provides a rich soil in which the issues of sin are intertwined with legitimate feelings of anger, hurt, and disappointment. When a person is victimized, her inherent commitment to deepen on her own resources swings into action. The determination to make it all against all odds being a frightening cycle involving the elements of shame and contempt. Shame and contempt are not well understood terms, and their role in the experience of SA takes time to comprehend. This chapter will deal with shame, and the next chapter will examine contempt. To set the scene for an understanding of these concepts, it is important to understand what it means to be a person, a sinful person, a fallen image bearer. A fallen image bearer. That was page 57. Okay, so since I'm turning the page, it's gonna page 58 has like a subtitle type thing, Man, a Person of Dignity and Depravity. But we're still in chapter 2, the beginning of chapter 2. But it has like another like subtitle thingy. So I'll break there for a second and just talk about what I think so far. Okay, so first of all, just to like the elephant in the room, like to address it. I know coming from an IFB church, a lot of people are like atheists and do not want to talk about God in any way, shape, or form. So I'm trying really hard to like not seem like I'm preaching at you if I'm reading this book. Like, remember that this is not my opinion, not my work. And I respect that the fact that a lot of our victims here on our page, on the Blind Eye Movement page on YouTube or on our Facebook, have really strong feelings of church, Christianity, God, and everything. And that's, like, if you believe in God, great. If you don't, fine. That is your choice. I am just here to try to help bring us all together, and all the people behind Blind Eye. Like, we all just want to bring everyone together and try to work on everything that happened to us. And maybe this could be a little therapeutic to like hear, I don't know, someone that's actually talking about abuse and claiming to be in the Christian world. Because we didn't get that. We didn't have that as kids. And I mean, maybe some of you did, where some Christians in the church actually helped you with your abuse, and thank God if they did. But ours, I mean, had they known about it, they probably would have helped us. But a lot of times when people in my circles would go forward and like tell a pastor, tell a teacher, tell somebody that they were being abused, it was like, pray about it, fast more, get right with God. And that was like, excuse me. So like, if this book starts just like blaming the victim, it's out. Like, I'm done. But so far, I think what they're trying to say basically is, well, how about I'll just say what I'm getting out of it. What I'm getting out of it is like, they were talking about how you go into flight or fight, and you're constantly trying to fight a ghost, and that is like your abuser, and then some of us, while we're trying to fight this ghost, this terrible person from our past, sometimes we add like more layers to that while we're trying to seek love and trying to like fill the voids that they left, gigantic voids. We're trying to fill that with like a new relationship, a husband, a wife, and sometimes they hurt us more, and then like we're left again with like mistrust and guilt and like anger. And I just, like, they were talking about rage in here, and like I totally get it. Like, I had to work so hard on my just revamping my whole personality basically from all my abuse, and it's just, it does take a lot of work. It takes a lot of work to figure out like, why are you so angry, and who can you take it out on, and like, how can you get that closure? How can you feel better about it and not just be walking around like an empty shell because you don't feel loved, and you're pushing everyone away because you don't want to get hurt again, and you don't know how to fulfill that void. So like, regardless of if you believe in God or not, try to just like think about what it's teaching us in general, like the big scheme of things, and see if you can get anything out of this, because like I already feel like I have. It's just something to think about. Like books are just like food for thought, food for thought, food for thought. Yeah, something, whatever that phrase is. We're just giving ourselves ideas of like, how can we really move on? How can we really heal? How can we really make peace with what happened to us and live a fulfilling life and not feel like enraged every day and feel empty every day and feel like a ghost in our own skin, you know, because it's like we're fighting a ghost, but also I've walked around a lot of times feeling like almost invisible. Like I knew everybody knew I was there, but like just so empty, feeling like you're not seen in the way that you want to be seen and just not feeling fulfilled. So maybe TMI, but yeah. So that's what I'm getting from it. And yeah, let's, I guess, keep going. Please tell me in the comments, like, we're on page 58 now, but let me know, like, I guess timestamp wise, like, what did you think? Like, if you hear something I'm saying, reading, and you're like, ooh, I have this thought and maybe this can help somebody, or hey, this is what I'm getting from it. Like, I definitely do want to know. I want to hear everybody's thoughts and like make it like a little book club. Okay. It's not Christmas anymore, but look how cute this is. It's got little Santa Claus. I love this cup. It's so cute. He's just chilling there, and I just love it. It was a gift for our Secret Santa at work. Anyways, man, a person of dignity and depravity. Man, as Francis Schaeffer has put it, sorry, through my leaf, has put it, is a glorious ruin, a stately castle, intricately and masterfully constructed by the hand of an artisan who designed his work with no thought of expense or practicality, a proper concern of God's own glory and majesty was his only guiding force in creating a person. The castle, however, was given a life of its own, capable of rearranging itself. When man, speaking of both men and women, took it on himself to be as God, he ruined everything. Crumbling walls, rotten wood, and overgrown gardens. The decay became so extensive that only one with the eyes of a craftsman could see the structural beauty that remained underneath the overgrown foliage and overthrown walls. Nevertheless, it has glory in its form and composition. It is glory in its form and composition. Man is amalgamation. I don't know what the heck that is. Of dignity and depravity. A glorious ruin. Man, bearing the image of God, was made to be like God in his capacity to relate and his capacity to rule. In these capacities lies his dignity. God is a personal and relational being. He has existed forever in perfect relationship with himself. Father, Son, and Holy Spirit have loved and honored one another from eternity to eternity. Man is like God in that he was made to be in a relationship with God and God's creation. God has designed man to enjoy intimacy, to deeply desire to be known and to know. Man's capacity for enjoyment and the longing to realize his capacities draws man into deeper and deeper relationship with God and his creation. God is the designer, creator, and owner of the cosmos. One need only consider the staggering array of creatures. Their often bizarre form and blinding color to be stunned by the mind of the creator. And over this zoological kaleidoscope, man was put in charge to be God's manager and foreman. Man is not a creator who makes something out of nothing, but he was made to be an inventive, imaginative user of all that God made. The longing to see our life count or matter, the passion to make a dent in the world, to influence another person because of our presence, is a God-designed passion built into every man and woman. Man's person and position were indeed glorious and rich with dignity. Depravity. Another aspect of man must be considered, however, depravity. The ruin of the glory was sin. The fall into sin was the most absurd, groundless, unexplainable violation of glory known to man. How could man, who had all but one thing, absolute authority and knowledge, desire to own more? There is no answer because words and logic can never capture something so patently crazy. The choice to abandon vulnerable dependence on the word of God brought man to ruin. Through all the centuries since that day, we have maintained our commitment to strive for autonomous, independent control over life, suppressing the knowledge of God in unrighteousness. This depravity shows itself in murder or immortality, and in every endeavor of life, including witnessing to our neighbor, laughing with our friends, and kissing our spouse. To understand the depth and the extent of sin is to comprehend that our motives as fallen but regenerate beings are stained by sin, even as we attempt to honorably love God and others. The glory of the cross is that, in spite of every act, thought, or feeling being stained by the fall, or regenerate deeds are cleansed under the righteousness of our elder brother's sacrifice. Every person enjoys dignity and suffers from depravity. The structure of personality is a result of the interaction of these two dynamics. Dignity and depravity may be the raw elements of the human personality, but another reality serves as a driving force that motivates fallen man. Shame. Shame lurks as another powerful enemy to the damaged soul that gasps for life. Shame, the dread of being known. For most people, shame is another word of embarrassment. All right, we are on page 59, and it's another subtitle, subheading, whatever you want to call these things. I am kind of behind the reading times of whatever the bold thing is called. I can't think of it. I forget, I was homeschooled and then Baptist schooled for a little bit. Ain't the smartest crayon in the box. Shame, the dread of being known. For most people, shame is another word for embarrassment. Everyone knows that embarrassment is unpleasant, but hardly life-threatening. Years of careful grooming and mastery have enabled us to avoid embarrassment, or if we are caught, to melt into our surroundings as adroitly as a chameleon. No wonder little is known about the experience of embarrassment, let alone its more hideous counterpart, shame. Embarrassment is the worst, but I'm so good at being embarrassed. I just know that every day I'm going to be embarrassed about something, and that is why I'm reading even though I'm really bad at it. I just know that I live in a state of shame and embarrassment. That's just I don't know, my middle name. Shame is a silent killer, much the way that high blood pressure is a quiet, symptom-free destroyer. Fortunately, shame has a set of symptoms that can be discerned. Once the eyes are open to its presence and operation, but like heart disease, it is easy to ignore the problem or to mislabel it as heartburn or a minor chest pain. Page 60. What is this? Get out of my way. Okay. Shame has the power to take our breath away and replace it with the stale air of condemnation and disgust. A section of a letter from a friend illustrates the point. Sharing the fact of my abuse with them, a small Bible study group, elicited a cold silence that violently rattled the chains of shame deep within me. It was almost as if my disclosure of the abuse produced a shame that reached out and swallowed us all. It was only grace that enabled me to cling tenaciously to the knowledge that I am not an L word, and that there is a no shame in deeply longing to be loved. As I reflect on that evening with my friends, I believe I understand how my shame in actuality deeply touched long ignored wounds in the souls of my friends. Unlike other feelings that relinquish some of their power by putting words to the inner sensation, shame has the propensity to increase in intensity when it is first acknowledged. The mere decision of shame awakens the undealt with shame in others. For the reason shame is a shameful topic, one that most people would prefer to ignore. All of us, not just SA victims, have lived with the bitter taste of shame. Our memories need to only return to grade school or junior high to recall at least a few stories of insufferable shame. I will never forget the boy in 8th grade who was sent to the drugstore to purchase paper napkins for the class float. He returned with a huge box of sanitary napkins. I recall the stunned look of horror on the face of the teacher and the snickering laughter and smirking eyes of the girls. I was as unaware of the ribald humor in the purchase as was the boy who made it. I didn't know what a sanitary napkin was, but I was sure of one thing: I would never volunteer for any service if the result could be so devastating. It was not my shame, but I borrowed it and swore I would never do anything so stupid. I knew I was just as dumb in the ways of the world, so I chose to never do anything that required a risk of exposure. During gym, I went out to the track confident that I would be picked in the first or second draft when a team was chosen for a sporting event. I was a good athlete, but at lunch, I avoided the athletic track when boys were sizing up girls and girls were giggling about boys. I was shy and awkward. I learned in many situations that a girl could expose my sophomoric experience, and I would not knowingly walk into my own disgrace. Oh, scared me. Little lip clover jumped out of the bug and scared the crap out of me. I thought it was a bug. Oh my god. Okay. Awkward. Okay. Where was I? Now that I just got scared out of my skin. I would not knowingly walk into my own disgrace. Shame is a potential reality at every stage of life. The pressure to perform, to do well, to succeed can alternately be looked at as a desire not to fail because every failure lands in the rubble of shame. A major partner in a prestigious law firm remarked that he owed his entire career to shame. The hundreds of hours spent on a case were designed to ensure that no one knew more or was better prepared for a trial. What was the motivation? I cannot handle being beaten. Whenever I lose, I feel as if someone took my pants off in front of all my peers. Awkward. He was describing the experience of shame. The shame he felt at losing a case cannot be considered righteous and consistent with God's purpose for his life. The lawyer's shame at defeat implies that his real motive in doing well has little to do with serving Christ or using his abilities to their utmost. Rather, he is compelled by a drive to win. His God is success, peer prestige, financial rewards, and more likely the thrill of conquering others. What is shame? Another bold point. Subtitle. Something. Why are we so prone to feel shame over failure or making a mistake when we rarely experience shame or over yelling at our spouse or snubbing a friend? An answer to that question will help us begin to understand, to a degree, why a woman who has been SA'd feels shame over something that was not her fault. Shame, remember that, not your fault. Not a boy's fault, not a girl's fault, not a grown-up boy's fault, not a grown-up girl's fault. When you get essayed, not your fault. Don't care what you're wearing, don't care what the weather's like, don't care how you're walking, don't care about any of that stuff. It ain't your fault. Anyways. Shame has been called by Jean-Paul Sartre. Okay. Jean-Paul Sartre. I don't know how to say that. I'm so sorry. A hemorrhage of the soul. It is an awful experience to be aware that we are seen as deficient and undesirable by someone whom we hope will deeply enjoy us. Shame seems to involve at least 4 important elements: exposure, revelation, dread of the consequences, and empowering trust. Shame seems to involve at least 4 important elements: exposure, revelation, dread of the consequences, and empowering trust. How would shame empower trust? Oh, God, that's why I had to read it again. Like, shame, empowering trust. I would say it's like unempowering a trust, because like I wouldn't trust myself to like walk across the street if I fell out in front of everybody and my dress like flipped up. But anyways, the exposure. Shame is an experience of the eyes. If I were to commit a normal but socially vulgar act in private, like nose picking, I would not feel shame. I mean, I would still feel ashamed if I was doing that in front of my own self, because like I saw it myself. I would not feel shame, but if caught in the act by someone I know, I would likely feel shame. Shame is an interpersonal effect. It requires the presence of another, in fact, or in imagination, for its blow to be felt. Wait, what? For its blow to be felt. Oh, for the blow. Or the... for the blow of shame to be felt, someone has to be there. I feel like I can be ashamed and embarrassed all by myself. Like, I don't care if anyone sees it, because I was taught the Lord sees everything, and if he's watching, and then I just like picture like an audience. I don't know if that like can resonate with anyone else, but I always feel like there's everyone like watching me. And weird. But, you know what I'm saying? Like, we've taught about heaven since we were born, and people watching, and the Lord sees all, even when you're in the shower, when you're praying, when you're sleeping, when you're awake, well, you know, like our Santa Claus, you know, we've been taught that particular people were always watching, so, like, if I get embarrassed, I embarrass myself in private, too. Like, I don't know, that's where I think he's wrong. Like, he clearly doesn't talk to a lot of people like me. Okay. Anyways, where am I? 61. No, we're on 62. I'm trying to plug along a little bit more this time instead of stopping so much, but I will commentate a little. Okay. Consider the account of the fall in the 3rd chapter of Genesis. We are told that Adam and Eve were naked and felt no shame. See Genesis 2:25. Their nakedness and description of their physical appearance equally implies an absence of conflict and the presence of gentle, loving involvement. The evil one tempted Eve to question God's right to require dependent, vulnerable trust. He persuaded her that she had the right to be as God, knowing good and evil. The man and woman ate, and they became self-conscious. The worst. They saw their nakedness and sought leaves to cover their raw shame and betrayal. They knew that their rebellion deserved death, and they fled from the presence of God. Their capacity to feel shame did not lead to change or a return to the Creator. It led to the opposite attempt to hide behind a bush. But, there's no but, I accidentally said that. God discovered their hideout by asking Adam a series of questions designed to expose their rebellion and shame. The exposure, however, led to an arrogant attack against God. Listen to the narrative. Okay, it's kind of funny, like, that God created the world, God created the bad apples, and was like, don't eat that, I made it, but like, don't eat it. And then, like, Oh, you ate it. It's like, it's just so weird. Like, why did you do that? Why didn't you just like keep them all with no bad apples or whatever? I don't know. It's like, it just makes no sense. But okay, we're not supposed to know everything because then we wouldn't be God, I guess. Anyways, but the Lord God called to the man, "Where are you?" He answered, "I heard you in the garden, and I was afraid because I was naked, so I hid." And he said, "Who told you that you were naked? Have you eaten from the tree that I commanded you not to eat from?" The man said, "The woman you put here with me? Yeah, she gave me some of the fruit from the tree, and I ate it. So good job, God. You made a girl. And she tempted me to eat that bad apple that you made, too. And then apparently you made the snake that also tempted her, and she tempted me, and then we all failed." Like, why'd you make them? Imagine telling the Lord, "Don't blame me. It ain't my fault. You made her." Right. "If you had not created this woman, then I would not be in this mess." I mean, I feel him. Like, honestly, like, I'd say the same thing. Like, bro, you made him. It's ultimately a failure of your creation. You, God, the woman you made, are the cause of the fall. Exposure, more often than not, leads to shame. The natural response of an autonomous, independent, and self-reliant heart is to hide behind fig leaves or any convenient bush. If that does not work, and if we are discovered again, we will resort to vicious condemnation of the Creator or his creation as children of Adam and Eve. We bear not only their likeness to God as image bearers, but also their desire to be autonomous and their propensity to hide, blame, and attack when caught. As a result of the fall, we despise standing vulnerable before God and others. Therefore, we find countless ways to flee from his presence and avoid being seen. Shame is a dreaded, deep-seated, long-held terror come true. What we have feared has actually come about. We have been found. We have been found out. The dark secret. And there are many in life. There are many in every life that may involve a past indiscretion, thought, or behavior, a past disloyalty, a failure of conscience, a violent act, a cruel outburst, or a personal failure is known. All our elaborate defenses, disguises, and personality traits are held in bondage to the goal of not being known, because to be known is to be caught naked and defenseless. As I've said, everyone experiences shame to some degree, but SA people often feel marked for life. Oh, that's where, like, okay, definitely want to interject for a second. We're on page 63, by the way, at the top. So the whole thing about, like, oh my gosh, I just lost my thought. Oh, okay, so the whole guilt, like he's saying, like, we blame ourselves, like, who do we blame? And we feel all guilty, and shame, the whole, like, shame thing, like, we're really embarrassed. Well, like, if this is a Christian author or whatever, I don't read the back. I didn't read, like, the introduction of, like, who is this guy? Like, that would probably help me, like, know what he is, but I kind of, like, I didn't want to take the time. Like, I barely want to take the time to read a book, for crying out loud. It's gonna take me forever to read this. Anyways, so the whole guilt and shame thing, we were raised to feel that about every single thing we do wrong, okay? And maybe this guy is going to also try to tell us to be shameful for everything. But, like, since sex anything was, like, so bad, and we had to stay, like, 6 inches apart in an IFB church. You couldn't sit next to a boy without being, like, 6 inches apart, and you weren't supposed to be alone with a boy, like, your own age. Go figure. And they would just make you feel so guilty about everything that most people couldn't come forward because of the shame, because of the awkwardness, because we would feel so guilty and embarrassed. So we'd be embarrassed, we'd feel shamed, and then not only our own feelings we'd have to deal with, we'd have to deal with whatever the person that we come to makes us feel like. Like, so many victims, and I wish I could tell all their stories. And sometimes I think they want us to, but it's just so tricky with like I don't know, like naming people and putting stuff out there that like we don't know, like like whatever. I don't know. It's just really hard. Like I would love to share everybody's stories. So I want you as the victims to, make your own video and post it where like you can tag us and stuff. Because I want all of you to be able to tell your stories. And I want you to be able to tell it without feeling the shame as you probably would have or did back in the day when you first came forward, or if you've never come forward. Like, I want you to be able to tell your story and just tag us so it can be your own words, your own voice, your own face. I mean, you could even do an audio. Like, you could record a video with just like it, like black. Like, you can do this, and like not even show your face if you don't want to show your face, but just the audio. And let us know, because I know sharing my story really, really helped. But anyways, it's the whole concept of shame and embarrassment was pumped into our brains about anything SOL because it was like disgusting, gross, a sin. So since that happened to us, willing or not, it was super shameful. Oh, and he was saying like there's like a mark on us forever. And I 100% felt like that. And my abuser made me feel like that and made me feel like I couldn't marry a virgin boy. And I feel like some of the stuff I said in my court stuff, I felt like he was just shaking his head at me like, what? I didn't say that. And I'm like, am I crazy? Like, did that not really happen? But I'm like, no. I know that he said these things. Like, maybe I had a word or two off. Like, maybe he didn't say it exactly the way I was saying it. But I just remember, like, it's just like things that like stay in your brain. You don't really forget. Like, someone could try to make you think like you're crazy. Like, why would I just remember that for no reason? But I felt like I couldn't marry a virgin boy because I was essayed, and it just robbed me of setting my standards a lot higher. Like, my standards were 0 for our, like, my next relationship was at a 0. I had no like bar at all. It was just the floor. Like, whatever found me on the floor, I guess I felt that's what I deserved. Like, the bottom of the barrel kind of guy. And it shows. No offense. But like, had I known I didn't have to be so ashamed of what happened to me, I could have raised the bar way higher for the next person that I'd be involved with. I wouldn't have half the damage on my heart, mind, and soul had I not been so ashamed. And I guess that's why like this chapter is like really resonating with me, because shame really dictated the rest of my life. Because I was ashamed, I chose to go here. Because I was ashamed, I chose to work here. Because I was ashamed, I chose to marry the first guy I dated, like besides the high school one that like barely counted. So I just really hope that in the future, if someone gets essayed at all, hopefully they don't, but if they do, I hope that they have a much easier time coming forward right away. And if they're in a church, hopefully that church will hear about Blind Eye Movement, will hear about so many of these things happening to where they're not as scared to talk about it, and they actually have an open door, policy to abuse, and say like, hey, we're here to talk about it if you need something, and maybe actually take on what the public schools are doing right now, and they're actually teaching classes. It's like once or twice a year they teach all the kids with this I'm Safe program, and they teach them like the rights of your body, and that you have a right to tell someone that you need help. And they even give them like, it's like a bookmark like this, it's a little bigger, but they give them a bookmark and they write down like 4 safe people that they can go to, and they teach them, go down the list. If the first person doesn't help you, go to the second person. The second person doesn't help you, go to the third. If the fourth person doesn't help you, call 911. Like, they give them like an actual plan. And I think it's so important. It's so awesome, because like, what would have happened if Grace Baptist Church would have actually had a plan and actually taught us what to do if somebody violated us? If they taught us like that we could get help if we were abused, whether it was by a parent, teacher, staff member, older child, whatever, that could have completely changed like so many generations, like countless generations, because all of us who are affected, now our kids are affected, whether we like to know it or not. The way I raise my kids is affected by what happened to me, by my shame, by my guilt, by my overprotectiveness, by my untrustworthiness of other people, like everything is affected. Even now my current relationship is affected by the shame, the triggers, the everything, so yeah. So if Grace Baptist Church is still a church, which I think it is, and I know John Jenkins is still preaching his little heart out in one of the Carolinas. They should really look into the I'm Safe program for Michigan and teach that, and then follow through with that and actually help people, and not just tell them to pray harder and to get right with God so they stop being abused, or tell them that they just have a sexual demon and that's why they were saved. Like, come on. Okay. Anyways, there's my long interjection. Vulnerable before God and others, therefore, we find countless ways to flee from his presence and avoid being seen. The revelation. Shame exposes pretense, subterfuge. Whatever. Shame exposes pretense like a play, the curtain, the certain parts, and on center stage for all to see is a sight that provokes condemnation and disgust. I am naked and I am mortified. What is seen in the revelation? It depends on whether the experience causes legitimate or illegitimate shame. Shame is not an easy topic. It involves a universal experience most people would like to ignore, but it is also complex. It is also a complex concept. Shame can be a result of the exposure of sin, therefore legitimate and desirable. However, even the exposure of sin may provoke an experience of shame that is too intense and self-absorbing to be from God. On the other hand, much of the shame we experience is not due to the exposure of our sin, but the revelation of some deficiency, or better said, perceived deficiency, in our dignity. The difference between illegitimate and legitimate shame is found in the object of the exposure. Legitimate shame exposes depravity, and illegitimate shame shines a light on some element of dignity. A man who feels shame when he trips in front of a group of people has been seen as clumsy. His longing, an aspect of his dignity, to be viewed as competent and in control, has been disappointed because of his deficiency. Now, exactly why would he feel shame at something as inadvertent as tripping over a step? The answer involves an obvious observation. We blame wounds to our dignity by others and ourselves. For most of the pain in life, we are called lazy when we forget to make our beds, ugly when we fail to get a date, stupid when we did not excel in school. Don't I know it? Each attack ignored our depravity and zeroed in on some aspect of our dignity. Now, when our dignity is ignored and demeaned, we will feel exposed as undesirable, and we will likely hate whatever part of us has caused the pain. If it is our nose, then we will hate our face. If it is our ethnic name or culture, then we will want to blend with the light-skinned and blonde people who are most highly valued. But the part of ourselves we hate the most is our longing to be wanted and enjoyed. If we didn't want, then we would not care. If we didn't care, then we would not be shamed by others' rejection. Rejection is so sucky. This will help us begin to understand why shame is such a significant part of SA. Consider the damage done to the soul when the abuse is fused with the legitimate longings of the heart. The flower of deep longing for love is somehow hideously intertwined with the weed of abuse. Longings are wed to abuse. Abuse gets shame, and shame is inextricably related to a hatred for one's own hungry soul. Any significant abuse causes the victim to despise the way he or she's been made. A person wired for deep, satisfying, eternal involvement with others and God. A young woman I worked with felt nausea every time her boyfriend embraced her and showed any signs of physical warmth. When she was 14, she was forced to engage in oral sex with her older brother. She did not believe that her past SA had anything to do with her sick stomach. She saw it as a quirk in her personality, but one that was not a big deal. Her reason for seeing me was a 10-year bout with depression. The depression seemed more severe when anything positive happened in her life. One event will help set the scene. Her boss gave her an unexpected raise because of her significant contribution to the company. After she left work, she was filled with dread. She began to wonder if he was setting her up for an affair. She spun from those thoughts to a terror about several projects that she knew she had yet to complete. She was in a maelstrom of doubt and despair. She was surely going to be found out. Her peers at work would laugh at the thought that she had been rewarded for her work that others did as a normal part of their day. Before the day was over, she was in a full-blown depression. The route to understanding her despair became clear many months after this event. This woman did not bear praise or success. Good events set off a hunger for what she knew she would eventually lose. She later recalled praying for hours that her brother would not come into her room demanding a oral sex. Many evenings would pass, and she would relax and enjoy the stillness of that night, only to hear her brother's door open and the creaking of his footsteps that signaled a night of horror. One night she begged him to leave her alone. Never before had she allowed the full weight of her longing for a clean, loving relationship to grip her, and she wept. That night he arred her. After the sickening violation, she decided never to pray or want or hope for anything. Her longings for relief were shattered. That is really, really sad when kids are like praying and begging God for it to stop and it doesn't stop. Like that, I have a very hard time justifying. Like I can understand why people are like, hello, like God, were you not listening? Like I'm an innocent child here. Like why couldn't that prayer have been answered? Like I totally feel that, and it does make me really angry because I was there. I prayed all the time and cried every Sunday. Her longings for relief were shattered. Her dignity was assaulted, and the horror of the abuse was intertwined with the hunger for an advocate who would tenderly wash her wounds and comfort her. In a deeply sad and perverse way, the only relief she found was in destroying her desire for escape. Now, years later, whenever some delightful event occurred, she felt herself tightening and flee from the rising desire for more. Whenever the desire to be loved and to be enjoyed was aroused in any setting, she experienced a wave of nausea and shame. Longing and shame were wed to her sense of being, a woman whose only worth was in being used for someone else's pleasure. All right, I'm going to stop there. We're on page 65, about like halfway down, or most of the way down, like the last paragraph or so on 65. But my little puppy, I can tell he's like getting antsy, wants to have attention. So I'm going to stop there. But I would love to hear what you guys think so far. And let me know how your experience was and her being nauseous all the time. I remember like my poor friends at school, in high school, I'd be like, I'm so nauseous, and like my stomach hurts, and I would be like shaky, and everyone would be like, dude, what is wrong with you? And everyone would be like, when are you pregnant? And I'm like, because that was the only thing we knew like that nauseousness would like come from, was like being pregnant, and like everyone would be like, haha, of course, because like nobody was having S at all, in like our Baptist little Christian school, like we weren't even allowed to be alone as boys, let alone like do that. And it's like, of course I wasn't. But little did they know, obviously bad things were happening to me against my will. So I was nauseous like all the time, and I stayed nauseous for years and years and years until finally, like after a lot of counseling and talking about it over and over again, talking about it finally, like I stopped shaking during talking about it, and then I slowly stopped getting nauseous. And it's like, it's shocking how much stress really affects your body. So de-stress tonight, do something good for you. Love yourself. Know that you are worthy and you are special and you are precious and you are loved. So, with that note, I will see you next time. Bye, everybody. IFB, which is independent, which is IFB, which is Independent Fundamental Baptist Churches. Why? That is like so hard for me to say for some reason. I don't know why. Okay, good.
I think the dot was on the other side. Loosen up, stop being a freak.
So, if I can step up the camera, that would be great. So, anyway. Amalgamation.
Nose picking. I would not feel shame.
I would not feel shame.